Hey everyone, Psycho here, and welcome to another episode of the Psychological Problems Podcast. Today, as usual, I'm joined by my special guests, Flavia.
Hello.
And Bob Meatbag.
Hello.
We haven't done these in a while, and I wasn't really planning on doing them. But I asked people, what they wanted me to do when it comes to videos, because I haven't been making videos for a while. I've had my pointy chins being uploaded, but one of the big reasons is I don't know what to talk about necessarily. Like, what am I going to say that is of value? It's not like I'm not learning stuff, but I am. I'm learning stuff, but I don't feel like anything is ready to give. So I found that certain people were kind of not sure, like, what am I doing? Am I still making videos? What happened to me? And so I thought, okay, they wanted, the consensus on the Discord anyway was that they wanted to see Psychological Problems Podcast. And I thought, like, what could I talk about? Because I don't feel ready. I don't feel like I know stuff yet. And so one of the things I thought was that maybe sharing what other artists are going through, and Bob and Flavia giving our feedback in whatever capacity. So we collected, I think, 33 messages from people, and let's just get into talking about them. So this one's from Echoberry, and they say, I think the initial desire to draw. Oh, so I asked, what got you into art, and what keeps you doing art, or if you quit art, what made you quit? Because I felt like a lot of times people who make YouTube videos, especially like art teachers who make YouTube videos, were coming from a point that's pretty far from when we were students. A lot of us have been doing this for a while. Like, I think Sinix and I are both like 20 plus years. So it's been a while since we were at that earlier stage, or because some of these people aren't at an early stage either. But I thought it would be good to let other people's voices come through and kind of, maybe you relate. And if you do, that would be great to know. And if you want to, if you didn't get a chance to be on the Discord and post stuff, first of all, we have a Discord. I guess I'll try to post the link in the description. But anyway, you can still write in the comments, in the YouTube comments, your stuff if you'd like to share. But let me get to this. So I think the initial desire to draw was really just to see more of what I liked. I really enjoyed the limited JP, I guess that's Japanese media, I was exposed to. Your classic 90s kid stuff like Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And I just wanted to see more of stuff like that. It's gotten more refined over time, more personal, and more specific to my tastes, but at its core, I think my enjoyment of art comes from making images I'd like to see, both in style and in subject matter. Improving my ability to draw makes this task easier, and finding people who resonate with my work feels like finding people I'm able to connect with. I don't really see myself falling out of love with the process and wanting to stop. It's too useful as a form of self-expression for me to ever seriously consider quitting of my own volition. I have, however, feared I'd have to quit due to arm/hand finger pains. Even doing my best to take good care of myself, slowly I found myself able to draw less and less. I could manage about 2 hours a day before I really started to suffer, and this went on for years. It was multiple issues, partially health-related. I suffer from some joint issues and some from general tablet use, but I work digitally and needed to in order to do my freelance work, as well as it being the medium I enjoyed the most. So changing that wasn't practical. Things have a happy ending, though. I recently purchased a Cintiq, and the changed hand position / drawing upright has made any problems I had virtually vanish. I don't have words for the amount of relief I feel, knowing I won't have to give up what I love doing, or even have a handicap on my progress anymore. Still, I don't regret going through that. I think the fear of being unable to draw, the idea of not being able to pursue drawing has really solidified this. Solidified this is what I want to do, because I still wanted to make images I wanted to see, even when it was difficult or even painful. Okay, so
Yeah.
I think
like the story.
we all relate to the pain
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Everyone here suffered some wrist slash hand whatever issues.
Yeah.
And for me,
I might be.
oh, go
go
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I might be able to give some advice. I'm not sure how much this could be applicable to you, but I've been training in martial arts for the past little while, and then because of that, I had to buy hand wraps in order to properly protect my knuckles and my wrist, because whenever I go into sparring, I have to wear that stuff so I don't get any injuries. When I was drawing, I found that like my wrists or my arms started to hurt. What I do is I'd get the hand wraps and I'd wrap it around my arm, make it tight enough so that it's like it's pretty snug, but not enough where it's cutting the blood flow. And then when I do that, it's just like, oh, this severely reduces any pain I have, and then I can draw for way longer. So that could be useful.
Yeah. For me, it was similar to their thing because they got the Cintiq and that helped. For me, I went from like a Wacom Graphar back in the day, those 6x4 small ones, to a Intuos, and that like a large. It was an Intuos 3 large, I guess, whatever, 9x12, 12x9, something. So that really helped. So I understand that, but this is good.
For me, it was the Cintiq that murdered me.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So everyone has to find the right thing for them.
The right tools.
Yeah, the tools help a lot, and also whatever we say or anyone else says might not apply to you. So keep that in mind too. If someone recommends something because it's very ergonomic, remember that that's for them. It's ergonomic. It could actually be bad for you. So developing a good sense of what works for you is really important. And if you're doing something and it feels uncomfortable or you're starting to get pain, when you start to get pain, if you can recognize that, that's really useful because then you can stop before it becomes a serious injury. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the non-pain part of the story, because especially I relate a lot to the part where Echoberry talks about making images they'd like to see, and connecting with people who like those images feels a lot more, I don't know, like you resonate with something that is much more true to yourself. And personally, because I have quite a bit of trouble expressing certain feelings, certain parts of my personality through words or through, I don't know, like tone of voice or stuff like that, it's much more relevant to me when people respond to art I make, because I'm able to say so much more. I'm able to, like, all right, this is much more relevant than if I just said I am angry, or that just is kind of flat. So I'm very much on board with using art to sort of connect more closely to people who you might be compatible with or resonant with. So that's cool.
All right, so moving on to the next one. Kiwi Gourd 22 says, I've been drawing ever since I could remember. Will be 19 in August. It started as me drawing dragons, skulls, your normal prepubescent things. Just drew what I wanted, when I wanted, and absolutely hated art classes at school because we were always given specific subjects or topics to draw while I wanted to do my own thing. The doodles on the back of my notebook started evolving into comics and short stories about insects fighting anthropomorphic fruit, a teddy whose best friend was a yeti. Having born in India, I chose engineering, got into a university, but my heart still desired creating worlds, coming up with concepts of otherworldly vehicles and creatures. Soon, I discovered there are people who do that and also make a living out of it, so I immediately fell in love with that idea and still am. But to reach that level, you have to learn the fundamentals, so I started my journey and started learning them. Somehow convinced my parents and dropped out of college. They still want me to go to school, even if it's an art one. A couple of months passed, and in the midst of grinding the fundamentals, I realized even if I was drawing, I wasn't making any art. Even mindless doodles were boxes, cylinders, and skulls in perspective or rendering primitive forms. I stopped making art and shifted my focus on the technical aspect of drawing. My current struggle is maintaining a balance between improving the quality of my art and actually making it. In conclusion, the answer to why I draw hasn't changed. I draw because it's fun, and it's one of the ways I can create stuff I like. So, I think this is pretty relatable.
Yeah.
A lot of people go through this, and it's probably like, if there's one main topic of this video, it would be addressing this thing where you have yourself pre-fundamentals, where your vision is very strong, your creative impulse is pure, what you want to say is there, and then you are confronted with, but I don't have the skill or the tool set required to create it. Therefore, I need fundamentals. You learn fundamentals, and in doing so, you often lose a lot of the creativity. Your mind gets narrower in, how much you can think about. So this is definitely something I'd like to touch on for some of the others, because I felt this was a recurring theme. All right. I think also your parents expecting something is probably very common for a lot of people, especially Indians, Asians of all kinds can relate. All right. Confuzzled says, like many, I started drawing at a young age and did it to expel my imagination onto paper, filling pages with knights, World War II soldiers, Halo Spartans, and all that stuff. Despite these drawings being 90% stick figures and random lines, it was fun to immerse myself in my own scene and let my imagination go wild. Yeah, that's pretty normal. Okay, after a while, I met a lot of people who were really good at drawing. They were like Kim Jung-gi or Jung-gi Kim in my eyes. The more I viewed their work, the more disappointed I became with mine. Soon enough, I just dropped drawing due to how frustrated I was with my results and how I couldn't improve. They just always looked wrong. Comparing myself to them just diminished whatever hope I had with my art. Yep. Few years later, after getting sucked into anime and history, I came back to drawing. They just blew my mind with all these epic moments and ideas that I wanted to illustrate/animate. Unfortunately, I didn't have money for commissions, so I took it upon myself to do it. I went through dozens of tutorials and even restructured my thinking process. One of the important things I learned was to only compare myself to myself. After drilling the idea in, I wanted to draw more, knowing that what I draw now is better than before, and what I draw in the future will be better than now. As of now, I draw every single day to improve my skills, knowing in the end I'll be satisfied. Well, that's good. I think this is a good, healthy way of thinking. Do you have any comments?
I think that's pretty healthy. So yeah, you should go about doing it that way.
I think comparing yourself to others, there's definitely a good way of doing that and a bad way of doing that. If you confuse yourself with others, that's when comparing screws you up. By that I mean, let's say you have an idea of what you want to draw, and you, like for me, for instance, it was portraiture. I wanted to draw faces, but I might look at someone doing really cool mechs, and it's like, whoa, that's super cool, that's super impressive. And then maybe I feel like I should be able to do that, and maybe it even inspires me to, try something of my own, but I didn't really want to do that initially. It's sort of like I got influenced because I thought what they did was cool, and then I got discouraged, as opposed to if I knew, for instance, I really wanted to draw a portrait like a specific artist, or like, the way they do shadows is really cool. I really like that and I want that in my own work, then comparing can be really useful, because then you're like just like stealing that one thing you want or acquiring that one thing you want.
Yeah. I think if you compare yourself as an identity, a person to a whole other person, you're very likely to get sidetracked because everyone comes with their own reasons and motivations and feelings and stuff. But if it's a technique where you're comparing yourself to a benchmark that you've set, that you have agency over, it can be productive. But if you're comparing yourself like, oh, this person's getting more success or this person's things are more correct, in the absence of a purpose, I think it's very confusing.
Yeah. That way of doing things tends to repress your intuition, and then you just start trying to replace it with like a copy of whoever you're trying to emulate, and that's a really bad way of doing it because you're not going to be better than the original, basically.
Yeah. All right. So Ambiguity says, I got into art initially because it was the only thing I got praise for. My struggles with being dissatisfied occurred very early on, though. I could always tell my work wasn't very accurate, but I couldn't figure out the specific reasons for it. Despite my constant frustrations with my skill, I still wanted to be an artist because I genuinely enjoyed the act of creating. My next hurdle came from trying to understand how I was going to become good enough to do that. The internet had no resources at the time, and anytime I would ask people, all I would get was just practice, and if you're talented, you'll get good at it. I've always been very dissatisfied with this answer, but since I didn't have a better one at the time, I just copied like I always had. It was around the same time that my eye level got another big boost, so I quit art because I didn't know how to fix anything, and calling myself an artist didn't feel right after that. 5 years later, I suddenly got the itch to start drawing again after seeing some others draw on non-art forums. I wanted to try drawing from imagination since I was too afraid before. I did this for 3 years and started looking for more information on drawing. Thankfully, the internet was a lot better at this point. I eventually found people talking about fundamentals, which made research way easier. I got obsessed with hoarding any little bits of information I could dig up, and hanging on the words of anyone who seemed like they knew what they were talking about. I ended up learning for the sake of learning without any idea of how or what I would use it for. It became a struggle to get ideas for images outside of academic things, so I resorted to just picking random art to model mine after that I thought I could make money with. I derive no joy from making things that seems to be in demand in the US market, though, so production is still slow. I still love the craft, but I have no love for the images in my gallery. Okay, what do we have to say about this?
Ouch.
Ouch, yeah. That was my thought as well.
I can relate. I definitely can relate to that. I have no love for the images in my gallery, and also I very much relate to the demand in the U.S. market. This is something I think a lot of non-North Americans don't quite understand, that there is a different taste in different parts of the world, and it's almost like American culture to an American feels like culture, and to an outsider feels very specific to an American culture, like kind of like a certain food type thing. So I do understand that, but it does feel like, yeah, you have to, like, everything is geared towards the US market because that's where the money is, that's where the jobs are, that's where things are. But I think there's more variation that's starting. Like, I see more Russian artists who paint in a Russian way. Like, it's very Russian. It's not to be confused with American. I don't know. I really hope there's more variety.
Same.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, Violet Spectrum says, I drew because it was something I could do. I grew up pretty bad at just about everything. My sister ran faster. I struggled to learn to read. I was failing in school, but I could draw. It was one of the few ways I could express which things caught my interest too. As I grew older, I discovered manga, anime, and RPG video games. I'd been playing platformers before that, and discovered art could be used for storytelling. I came up with characters, stories, and eventually met a webcomic study group that August Brown, now the co-founder, artist for The End webcomic, linked to on their DA. I learned so much from the people I met there. We streamed together in a chat room like setting nearly every day. Went to a convention for the first time, studied anatomy and color and all sorts of things. I grew so much and had so much fun. Then I went to art college. One of the worst decisions of my life. It destroyed my sanity. I couldn't stay in touch with my old pals. I fell off of social media. I graduated and had a shitty job. My physical health plummeted. I could hardly draw anymore, and I felt myself withering.
Oh,
No.
A year ago, sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Violet Spectrum, just relating. A year ago, I changed my day job and got into streaming. It has since reignited the love and passion I always had for art. I even started writing music, and now I'm learning Unity. Art has been a part of my soul that no matter what hardships I've been through, my passion for it has yet to be extinguished. Well,
Yay.
that's good that art is that for you. I really feel like art should be that in everyone's, like, should is a tough word, so maybe not should, but it's good when people have art in their lives, even if they're not pursuing it professionally or anything like that. It's just it's just another language, I guess, that's good. Like, I think music, art, physical activities and things are just like, yeah, it's good to be well-rounded like that. But I'm sorry to hear your art college destroyed your sanity. That sucks.
that must have been one bad school.
Something we see more. So yeah, we should talk about this one later as well, because we do have, this is another thread that's sort of connected. All right. I have been drawing since before I can remember. At the start, I probably just genuinely liked the process of drawing. But because I was good for my age, I also received attention and validation through it, in a lot of cases from people that didn't really care for me otherwise. And I feel like that quickly became part of the reason as well. When I was around 10, I got into anime and video games, which inspired me to create my own characters and stories, which I then expressed through art. After a few years of being in the internet art community, I discovered the concept of fundamentals. I also learned that you can be a character concept artist for a living. So I started to practice harder with that goal in mind. But after a while, I kind of burned myself out and didn't really have much fun drawing anymore. As I had gotten older, I also felt less and less good for my age, and more like nothing special compared to who's out there. Because I had relied on that feeling and validation for so long, the lack of it discouraged me a lot. Living from freelance job to freelance job also seemed unreliable to me. Plus, I was never one to be able to network with people. With all that, I felt like I wasn't cut out for the art industry. At that time, I didn't really watch anime anymore either, and thus didn't feel inspired to create anime-style art just for the sake of it as well. I felt like my drawings had to have some kind of meaning and purpose besides just looking good, and struggled to meet these expectations. So even as a hobby, art stopped being fun to me. My depression also got worse at that time. For about 4 years, I stopped drawing almost completely. I forced myself to do it a few times, but it was more because I felt like that's just what I do, and I need to draw because that's what I'm good at, and not because I genuinely wanted to. During that time, I focused on pursuing other fields. Then coronavirus happened while I was visiting my parents. I finally had a break from the stress of my daily life, and not much to do, so I started drawing again. After that, I started to feel that itch of really wanting to draw, just out of love for the process, for the first time in years. Right now, I'm at a point where I really enjoy doing art again, so much that I can't wait to finish my coursework in order to have time to draw. Since I feel like I could draw all day, while also struggling to keep concentrated on uni stuff for more than a few minutes, I'm thinking that maybe I should pursue a career in art after all. But I am terrified to commit to it because I fear that I'll just stop one day, and I'll be left with nothing. And because I am now half focusing on art and half on my university classes, I feel like I don't put enough work in either one to succeed. To end on a less sour note, I'm very happy that I can enjoy the process of drawing again. And even though I'm glad if other people like my art as well, just having fun with it is enough for me to keep going at the moment. All right. So it's good. It's good that in the end you found the reason for doing it. Again, your path is kind of familiar. Started out with, you liked what you saw in video games and whatever, and it inspired you, and then school or fundamentals or whatever happened, and you compared and kind of lost your interest. I think it's really hard with a career in art because art isn't one thing. It's kind of like someone saying, I want a career in science. And they don't know if they want to be a doctor, studying, like, even if you were in medicine, that's a huge field. Like, what kind of medicine? Do you want to be a physiotherapist? Do you want to be a neurosurgeon? Like, these are completely different. So it can be tough to find where you fit. And, like, you want to create characters and stories, but then the character concept art things, like, well, there's so much competition on one hand, but also if you get a job, will you be creating characters and stories that you want to create, or will you be sort of hired to create what someone else wants you to create? And how do you feel about that? Like, some people are okay with that, some people are definitely not. Any thoughts?
Not really. I think you summed it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ari says, I draw to create things. I used to draw a lot as a kid. I drew stick figure comics and copied art from pages of random books I found, but stopped and only started drawing recently, December of this year. I want to bring the things I imagine in my head into real life. I have a ton of things that I imagine in my head, and so I want to put that on paper or screen. I want to draw these fantastical environments, beautiful scenes, awe-inspiring pieces. Although it's a long while before I become that good, it's fun regardless. It's also a fun hobby outside of gaming. I keep making art, well, because I'm too deep in it, and it makes no sense to me to drop learning it. Another reason is because it's fun. It's also nice to work towards something, although after all this studying, copying, and etc., I'm paralyzed by the fear of creating bad drawings, which makes it hard to draw for fun sometimes. All right. Well, I would say when you said, I want to draw these fantastical environments, beautiful scenes, awe-inspiring pieces, remember that. This is what people forget. You're at the stage where you're still early enough where you remember who you are. Like, what happens is, see, you're at the border where you're starting to say, like, I'm paralyzed by the fear of creating bad drawings. That is what will kill you. It won't kill you literally. You'll still be alive, But, I mean, it kills the spirit. Because what happens is we have these ideas of what we want to do. Then we're like, but I can't do them. Then we find out usually, often by talking to other people, going on a forum or getting critiques or watching videos, someone will mention, like, oh, you've got to learn if you want to do this, you need to learn your fundamentals and learn perspective and all this. And then you think, oh shit, that's what I got to do. Okay, let me do that. Then you do that, and it's its own world, and before you know it, you forget that you want to draw fantastical environments, and you're more thinking about, like, can I get the perspective right on this piece? What would the lighting look like? Oh, yeah, I should get some rim light on that. I need a good big, medium, small read. And it becomes very technical. So the solution to this, I think, is to always do what you want to do, and forget the part where you're afraid of bad drawings. Bad drawings are what you need. You need bad drawings. Bad drawings are good drawings because they are what get you to... You need a lot of bad drawings to get to the good ones. So it's just par for the course. If you can detach yourself from results and not be thinking about, like, oh, I made a bad drawing, and as if that reflects on you. Like, oh, I made a bad drawing, therefore I'm a bad person, I'm a bad artist, everyone's going to think I suck. If you can get away from that, you are at the stage where you can save yourself. What so many have gone down the path of seeking skill for the sake of skill, forgetting who they are, and then having it where at the end they've got like this tool belt full of tools and they have no idea what they're going to do with them. Like, now what? I can draw stuff, and then they become like the wandering damned who are like, any ideas? Anyone want someone to draw? I can draw. I'll draw for money. You need an artist?
Give me a topic.
You need an artist? Oh, here's a challenge. Maybe I'll do this because that's gonna tell me what to draw. In the beginning, you're like, I don't know what to draw. I can do it. But and I'm sure you use exactly that accent and sing in that way. I'm positive that's what you sound like.
That's all of our original voices.
Yeah, but yeah. So don't lose that, and don't think like whatever you want to get, you can totally get, and you don't actually need to go through horrible pain and suffering to get it. If you think you do, you're kind of wrong, because you can get it without that. But yeah, okay. Okay, Mohammed Yilmaz says, why I draw. I like making cool shiz just because. I'm bored, and I love art, games, cartoons, books, etc. I just draw a lot, and really enjoy it because I do. It's who I am. Too many ideas and big imagination. Learning is fun. Makes me feel progress. Why I don't draw. School. There's a long story to this, but who wants to hear that? Well, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I would have been curious.
That was kind of the point. But okay. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. Warden says, I used to draw lots because it was a direct outlet for ideas and passions, but I've been struggling monumentally to draw over the last couple of years as my own mental health combined with some appalling experiences in certain art circles have been gatekeeping that sense of flow for me ever since. Currently, I'm able to tap into it once in a blue moon, but 99% of the time, it overwhelmingly feels like I'm miscommunicating with myself, and by the time I try to address it, the original spark has been wiped out by invading convictions. I don't even really know if I can say I draw anymore. Well, that sucks. This is what I am really hating nowadays, is just this culture that we've created. It's so unhealthy, where you're constantly bombarded with stimulus. You are always seeing everyone's stuff. And not just everyone, but like the best of the best of the best of the best. We're not even built for that. We're kind of like, we can handle, I'm the best in my school. Kind of like that. Like maybe, I don't know, 3 to 150 people, something like that. So, a number in the hundreds anyway. We can handle that. But these huge things when, and like the art circles where, you know, especially this mentality that you have to be tough to help. I think that definitely works for some people, but it definitely doesn't work for other people. So there are certain environments that are very toxic. And some people thrive in it. Some people, that's exactly what they need. They need the like, all right, yeah, let's like, oh, you suck, man. Yeah, get better. You don't know how to draw stuff. Learn anatomy, get good, whatever. And there's a handful of people who are like, oh, right, that motivates me. Yeah, that puts a fire under my ass. Now I want to do stuff, and I'm going to do it now. But for a lot of people, that's just like super toxic. And the idea that that is the way it must be is so tiresome.
Yeah, I think that's the worst part about it, because if you gather with a bunch of people that are like-minded, and you motivate each other, and you're compatible in how you communicate and stuff, that's good. But to then superimpose it onto everyone else, like, no, man, you're wrong. And also to hang out with only one type of person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good for development.
Yeah. I also think that it's like this current environment is taking away from time from yourself, because like even when you're away from this environment, you're thinking about it. So this latest trend, or that artist is doing that. Whereas for myself, and I think for maybe some others as well, it's like it's really important to be able to look into yourself, just be like, what do I like? What does art mean to me? Then just to let your intuition explore that, because that's when you really become creative. You let your own things evolve into whatever they're going to become. It feels like it's getting harder to do that these days. Yeah.
And there's also this monopoly that shitty people have when it comes to these things, because if you think about it, and when I say shitty people, that's maybe a bit harsh, but people obsessed with skill. So let's say you're the type of person who does, you are driven by skill. Okay, so you work really hard because you want to be good, and damn it, I don't want to be a shit artist. Okay, well, this is already kind of toxic because you're doing something just to prove how good you are. So that's coming from a low self-esteem, and you're trying to convince others that you are worth something by doing a thing instead of being a better person. It's like, if I'm good at art, then they'll see how good I am, or something like that. But that's a lot of drive, right? Like, that's a lot of drive to get good. So often people like this who are obsessed with fundamentals do get pretty damn good. They get very skilled. But what happens is they don't necessarily have good ideas. So for a person who is maybe has good or better ideas or something like that, but they're starting out, so they don't really have the skill, these people are very like, you look up to them because it's like, well, shit, they have skill. Like, look at them. I can't argue. Like, they may have a shit personality, but look at the results. They've got really good fundamentals, so I should listen to them. And what happens is there's not this, you kind of submit to this oppressive atmosphere instead of understanding the way it really is, which is that skill and technique and fundamentals come over time, and you can get them. You don't have to do like super bad, like it doesn't have to feel soul crushing to get that improvement, but it takes time. And when you are not aware of how long, like, it takes time. Okay, if someone told that to me when I was starting out, it's gonna take time, I'd be like, how long? Yeah, like, what are we talking about? Are we talking a couple weeks, years, months? What does this mean? And it's different for everyone. So there's no like, well, I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but
that carries with itself a lot less strength than here's what you do, here's the recipe, here's your timeline.
Yes, like, certainty.
The lack of clarity in personal development is something that I very rarely see people being equipped to deal with emotionally, because that's another pattern. I guess we can talk more about it afterwards. The fragility of the self and the identity and the uncertainty, and how, whereas when you're studying fundamentals, it's like, you got perspective, you got anatomy, like, it's quantifiable. Progress is quantifiable. Things are clear. Comparisons are possible.
And it's a lot easier to follow someone who's got conviction, because it sounds right. So if someone tells you, like, you suck and this is what you need, and they're very sure of themselves, it's much easier to believe that person often for most people than it is to believe the person who's like kind of doubtful, who's like me, because I don't have much confidence in myself. And so everything is kind of like especially from what I've learned, there are no right answers. It's not like this works. It's like, this works for this type of person some of the time. It may work for you. It may not work for you. But what sells more is like, if you want to be good, do this. This is how to get good. I'm going to teach you. You're going to get good. Just pay me, give me some money and I'll tell you how to get good. Or watch my videos and I know the way, and this is what you need to do, and you've been doing it all wrong, and this is going to be the thing that turns your life around. It's like, nobody has that for anything, because there is no such thing that universally applied, it works for everyone. We are way too different. We have different learning styles. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, it also feels like a different type of focus when you really try to focus on fundamentals and stuff like that. It's like the difference between competition versus expression. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you want to get really good. Oh, everybody else is doing this. Oh, no, you got to do that. It's like, oh, this person's doing this. And it's like, no, you got to focus on this perspective point or something like that. And it just feels like it feels very much like a race. And while I do think it is good to get into those things every once in a while, it's like it's too much of it. Everything just feels like competition now. Whereas like for me, art always has, and it still is, very much about expression. It's like, okay, what are you expressing? What are you saying with your things? Are you expressing emotion? Are you expressing ideas? Are you expressing whatever it is that's really deep within you? You know, to me, art is an expression of consciousness and emotion and symbolism. And then when I take a look at the fundamental stuff, it's just like, oh, that's really good. You need that, but it's like it feels like too much.
And the thing is that for most people, that is what art is. They care about it as it's a communication tool to get your idea through a visual medium to get an idea across. Whether that is self-expression, whether that is illustrating someone's ideas, whether that is designing something. But it's within the art student world, fundamentals are like the most important. Like, whoa, you can do this. Wow, you did this with such cool brushstrokes. Oh, what brush is that? Nobody outside cares. Like, nobody in the mainstream cares about that stuff too much. It's more like, what is your point? But because as artists, especially when we're seeking out knowledge, we get into environments that are all about getting art skill and almost not at all about the idea that's to be conveyed. And so we're in this bubble, this super opaque bubble where we can't see outside anymore. And we start to have insular thinking where we just look at each other and like, oh yeah, cool anatomy and whatever. Whereas what's the idea? What's the idea? What's the idea? What are you trying to say? What's the story? Did you get that across? What's your feeling? What was the point of this? Those things are almost never talked about. I almost never hear those in 20 plus years of doing it. I almost never hear people talk about the idea and what you were trying to capture. They might talk about it on a very rudimentary level, like, oh, were you going for a dynamic shot? If so, you could do a Dutch tilt to the horizon and it will feel more dynamic, as opposed to what is your story? What is the point? Where is this coming from? So it's as if you were writing and you go to an environment where everyone's concerned with, like, if you're writing poetry, everyone's concerned with grammar and structure. Like, oh, do you have the right number of beats? Does this rhyme well? As opposed to like, what is the poem about? What are you actually trying to say? So yeah. All right. Art has always been a part of my life as far as I can remember. When I was little, I created a lot of characters and at some point started learning how to copy. That's all I knew until a few years ago when I decided to actually learn how to draw and do it more consistently. I didn't get into art for any specific goal. As far as I remember, I just wanted to do it because I found it enjoyable. At some point in my learning, I became aware of the fundamentals and started practicing them. Over time, I found myself really caught up in gaining more skill, but struggled with why I needed it. At the time, it felt like the best option as I had a lot to cover. And a while ago, I got burned out on the grind, but was stuck in a situation of being comfortable with practice, but uncomfortable with execution. So after overcoming that problem to some degree, I still struggle to have an answer to why I want to draw and persist on it despite the difficulties it's caused me. Art is the only thing in my life I've stuck to for this long and didn't quit at this point. Didn't quite at this point. No, didn't quit and at this point associate it with my identity. Sorry for my terrible reading. The main issue that's still plaguing me is fear of failure and high expectations, which alongside my low mental stamina makes me incapable of spending time on art as much as I want to, both for the sake of improving at it and creating more artwork. I have many ideas I want to illustrate, and while I'm not a good storyteller, I have some stories in mind, albeit in a really fragmented form. I enjoy the process and results of art just for the sake of it, and not specifically for an end result out of it, and find it interesting how I'm very adamant on pursuing it. I'm still trying to understand what things make me struggle with art and cause avoidance strategies. I've had attempts to actually quit, but it never gets out of my mind, so I've been on a journey to figure out more deeply what drives me towards art and how I can get myself to become a more productive and consistent artist. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. One of the things I would say, just as a recommendation, you mentioned you have stories in your mind, albeit in a really fragmented form. That's a good opportunity to figure out what they are and not leave them fragmented. I think this comes down to that we are, as artists, not just artists. Like, that's one way of thinking of it, but I actually prefer the term creator, because creator includes things like story, and you could create lots of things. You could create music, you could create art, you could dance, you could do a lot of different things. So as a creative person, art is one of the mediums you use to express yourself, but probably there are other things that you need to develop. So when you have stories in mind and they're really fragmented, what you're doing is you're shining your light of creativity through this fragmented story and getting the result, which is all scattered, and you're not sure of what you want. Once you actually get that story thing more in order and you know what you want to do and what story you're telling, you flesh it out more, you come to understand it, then it's no longer confusing why you do art. It becomes actually just super obvious. Like, we're going through that now. Bob, Flavia, and I, we are working on a Space Waitress K, and we find tons of problems that need solutions. Like, what does a chair look like? What does this chair look like, or something?
What does a knob look like?
What does the knob look like? I mean, that's just one example. Of course, there are more story-based or deep things, which I don't want to talk about, so we'll talk about knobs. But that type of problem has an obvious solution, and that solution happens to be in art. If the solution was, what is this character thinking? The solution is not in art. That is in figuring that out, probably a lot of writing or thinking, pondering, things like that. So once you know what it is you want to do, art suddenly becomes like it makes sense. Like characters, like creating characters. I used to think, okay, I like doing characters. I'm better at character design, so I guess I should do character design. How do I do that? Well, I guess I need a portfolio. I need characters in it. But this is all very convoluted. What do they want to see? Oh, they want to see a front view, a 3/4 view. Oh, that's frustrating. But yeah, I guess I need to learn how to do that. But when I actually made a story, it wasn't like, oh, they want to see a front 3/4 and back 3/4 view, because I guess that's what gets me a character design position. It was more like, I need to design this character. I don't understand what they look like from behind. What do they look like from behind? Oh, okay, I need, let me do a back 3/4 view. It will tell the most information of what I need to solve. It's very concrete and understandable, and it's like, oh, now character design makes sense. It's not to impress someone. It's not to get a job. It's to show what this character is. Like, it's just understanding it. Communication for yourself, for others. It helps to remember, like, oh, what does a character look like from this view? Oh yeah, I have my character design sheet where I drew the character so I could see what it looks like from that view. So, yeah. Any other input you guys have?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. Icy says, I started drawing to impress my parents when I was a little kid. Later it turned into wanting to impress my classmates. And finally, wanting to impress the internet, which led to being completely crushed, of course. After having my ego destroyed, I became obsessed with trying to feel like I was skilled again and started to actually practice drawing. Drew a ton and didn't focus on school. Now it's the only thing I'm good at, and I need it to survive. It feels like it's my only tool.
Aww.
This is very common. This is very
Yeah.
common and very sad, but
Yeah.
I can definitely relate. And I mean, it sucks how, I mean, maybe Flavia, you can talk more about it, where this comes from. Why do you need to impress so much?
Well, I think the problem isn't that necessarily, like, the matter is not necessarily why you need to impress so much. That's sort of because of the way families have been developing in the past decades. Communication and unconditional love and support is no longer, um, I don't know, the baseline for what happens in a family. So kids are tend to be treated as, you are worth something if you will receive love that should be given unconditionally if you do this. So they put a condition on what should be given freely. So for kids, of course their mind is going to look for the next, like, what can I do, what can I do, what am I worth, what do they like when I dance? All right, I'll dance. And some kids develop this into this showman type thing where they become either child actors or just like, oh, I'll tell jokes all the time because that gives my parents emotions that they project onto me. So it does become your only tool if that's the only thing that gets your parents to act expressively towards you. So for me, I find it sad how this goes full circle, where they start by trying to impress their parents and it works, and then they want to impress their classmates. So okay, they go one step larger, and it's like, well, it still works. And then the internet is unleashed because the internet is not a person you can actually impress. You can't target it. You can't.
Yeah. And it's
So,
like,
of course, if you pin all your hopes, all your ego, all your sense of worth onto impressing, like, that's not that. Those two shouldn't be connected. It shouldn't be bought and sold. It shouldn't be, here, I'll jump through hoops and you'll give me my treat. Because that's not affection. That's not value. That's not.
yeah, it's like you're seeking validation. Um, and that's why you're doing stuff. And then it's the only thing you're good at and you need it to survive. It's kind of like, I can understand that because I'm kind of in the same boat where if someone's like, well, you can't do art, well, I don't have a university degree, I don't have other skills really. Huh. It's kind of like, okay, now what? Now what? But I think regardless of where you are, you can turn it around and develop a healthier relationship with art where it's not about trying to impress people. But I don't know, because I'm still working on that.
And it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
I can't really blame anyone who's in this position, because how can you blame a child who didn't otherwise get a nurturing, an emotionally nurturing environment? And as an adult, who's going to give them that time of day? It's so much harder to try to patch yourself up as an adult, because there are just, people don't have the mental real estate to give you unconditional love and support for that time in which you're developing your, like, you can pay a therapist and they will give you the unconditional regard, and if they're good, it'll actually have some impact, but it takes years and years and years. And what do? Does the world stay still while you're doing it? It's super hard. So it's like, good luck with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would say just stick with it. Like, do your best
Yeah.
to really look into yourself and just not worry too much about what other people think. One of the ways that I think could be really helpful is to, like, you do your own private work. You work on your personal stuff. You don't really show it to other people. And it's like, oh, this is your private art. This is where you really express yourself, and you don't have that pressure of, like, I have to show this to somebody. Even though I know, like, that's a very fun part of art, which is expressing your work to other people. There is something to be said about isolating yourself for a little bit and then just creating work that's meaningful for you, because that's where you find out, it's like, oh, does without all the stress of the external. If I just create something for myself, do I really care about this? And then if you do that, then eventually I think you'll find that answer.
And also, I think understanding that you don't need to impress people as much as you might think you do. Like, that's only one factor of, and it's not even a necessity of any kind of relationship, is impressing people. That's not why people will like you. That's not why they'll want to be around you, because you're impressive. That might be why they admire you, but it's not going to be why they love you. So understanding that you are more than just your art, I think that's really important. And that
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say that that's something that's really important. Like it might be strange to think that, like, oh, I'm interested to focus everything into this one aspect of myself. It's like, no, that's art. Art is just one aspect of yourself. It is not. It does not make you the whole thing. It is a part of yourself you want to express. It's something that you are drawn to, but something that really helps in the end for not only yourself but your art is to find out the other things that you like.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you without this one tool to express yourself? There's different aspects to your psyche, and those aspects should be explored.
And what's much more important than being impressive is, in my view anyway, is being authentic. Where if you are vulnerable and open and honest, what you give is something people can relate to, or at least some people. Like maybe even most people won't relate to it, but someone's going to relate to it, and it's going to really matter to them, and it's going to affect them deeply. Whereas something that's impressive, it's kind of like, sure, I saw something impressive. I mean, yeah, it can last a little bit, but it doesn't affect us deeply. It's not the type of thing that is super relatable. It's more something that's just like, oh yeah, that was impressive. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So,
I think the degree of authenticity that you put out into the world directly impacts how much you get back and how fulfilling your life is going to be. Because if, let's say, you paint a picture and technically it's like, well, it's kind of janky and whatever, but it's authentic to the feeling that you wanted to project, and five people see it, but those 5 people have a meaningful connection to what you put out and they get back to you, that's a channel that is real. But if you make a picture that's, oh, I just did, I don't know, Supergirl or whatever, with her, I don't know what Supergirl wears, anyway, in her Supergirl outfit, and here's the wind blowing up her skirt, if she has a skirt, and 10,000 people, you get 10,000 likes, but it's likes of what did you make of yourself? It doesn't, it kind of slides off of you, and it's an ever depleting resource. Whereas if you've put out your feelings on a canvas and 5 people have seen it, you now have 5 potential friends, 5 potential growing opportunities, five real things in your life, real connections. So
yeah. Okay, QB says, I enjoy drawing for a number of reasons, but one thing that I love so much about art is the ability to really dig into the mentality and psychology of others. It's very common for the idea of the artist's own self-expression to be entirely pandered to and romanticized, with it put on others to enjoy what they, the artist, choose to express. But I'm quite the opposite, and the idea of pandering to consumers to create something that you predictably know will appeal to many others and be something near universally enjoyable is super fun to me. My major goal of creating not safe for work art directly reflects that. There's nothing inherently arousing about a drawing, and with the wide and easily accessible backlog of everything the internet has, one could wonder why hentai ever exists as it does. But successfully drawing hentai requires deeply understanding and manipulating the imagination of the person viewing it. It takes knowing the ins and outs of biological sexual attraction and carefully crafting every element of the art to claw into the most instinctive and primal desires of someone's mind, and then control it at your own will, guiding it into the exact direction you steer. It's the same reason why I love art in advertisement. Your end goal is to create something that people are guaranteed to like instantly the moment they look at it. with no prior investment or context. And the skill to know that you can reliably apply that is so amazing to me. It's up to you to appeal to the consumer, not their job to like your purely personal self-expression. I also love art because it's something I can do with my girlfriend. We met on the Psychro Forum and have a wonderful relationship for several years now, meeting in person multiple times and still going very strong. Okay, cool.
Cool.
It seems like this is the Don Draper form of hentai, but I think it's fine. Like,
But I understand it.
yeah, I do too.
I can
and it's
really relate
real.
to it.
It's real. This is
Yeah.
one of the things I talk about a lot for art in the commercial sense. When people talk about it, it's often they talk about, you know, what fundamentals do I need to learn to get to be able to sell my art. And my thinking is that you need to offer a service. Whatever you do, you're offering a service. If your goal is to make money with your art should offer a service. If your goal is self-expression, your art should be authentic. That's what I feel. So these are two different things, and you may make money with self-expression, you may not, but that's its own thing.
I think that's luck. That's
it's just
whether,
luck.
whether there's
Pretty
a
much.
need for a you in someone else's life.
And if you're good at business and marketing, and like maybe you do self-expression, that's one side of your personality, but then you're very business minded, and so you know how to sell your stuff. Some people can do that. Some people have that, like the ability to both sell and market themselves, but also be creative. A lot of people don't. Most people don't. But as a commercial thing, just creating art that, you know, affects people, moves them, that's all creating a service.
Yeah. And I feel like the connecting thread in QB's mentality is art is connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've been really relating to that when I do commissions for people, be they like pet portraits or furry art, or it's sort of a more direct way of understanding the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, have you given them something that they respond to emotionally, rather than here is me, like me if you want.
Yeah, and it's a intellectual, it can be like a puzzle in a way as well, like how do I get you to look at this, and everything has a deeper meaning, and that's why I like it as well. Like this type of thinking can be, it's really effective for all sorts of art, but like even storytelling art, like comics, you want the person to look from this frame to that frame, so you want to put the speech bubbles in a way that their eye can comfortably flow, but you also want the action in a certain way because you want to get this emotion. Maybe you make it where you want a really dramatic splash page that's super exciting. So what you do is the page before, you make everything kind of static and rigid and horizontal and boring. But the reason you do that is because you know when they flip the page, they're going to get something super dynamic and it's going to take them off guard. So if you think of art divorced from this type of thing, maybe you would think, well, every frame needs to be dynamic because otherwise people are going to say I made a very boring panel. But when you look at the big picture thing, your thing is like, no, this boring panel is boring on purpose because I want to lull the viewer into a sense of relaxation and feeling like, okay, and then boom, you hit them with like drama. And that's way more effective than if everything was super dramatic and you're constantly tilting the camera and then they vomit all over the place. So that's fine. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. All right. Let's move on. When I was very young, I was an active doodler. I probably drew a bit more than what the average kid would draw, but I was never anything serious. I was more of a writer at this time. I officially picked up art at the age of 11 and 12 when I first discovered anime. I thought the concepts and characters were just so cool, and I figured it was something I could do too. I made stories and drew characters constantly. It was so fun and carefree. Around late 2012, early 2013, I started to question my gender identity. Art was used as a way to cope with the struggle of these newfound feelings and to explore my identity. I ended up creating a male version of myself in the form of an OC/persona, and he became a staple in my journey of self-reflection. Drawing this representation of my ideal self brought me unbelievable comfort and relief and continues to help me realize new things about myself. As somebody who is afraid of trying new things and also unfathomably bad at making big decisions, having a fictional persona try out various things first has helped me conquer a number of obstacles I've encountered or questions I may have about myself. A small example of this would be what kind of clothing taste I have and what kind of hairstyle I'd like. I draw because it's an escape from reality. It's helped me shape the kind of person I am today and has given my life a purpose. I have goals and a reason to practice something every day to refine my skills. I draw because I find character design and storytelling fascinating and wish to tell my own stories one day. Art has been such a prominent and essential aspect of my life. I'm not sure how I could live without it at this point. Well, that's great. I'm really happy to read the other ways art is helpful to people, and this is definitely interesting and something that, in a way, thinking of designing your clothing for yourself, it's pretty cool that you can do that, because it's a lot cheaper than having to go and buy all these clothes. And then this it kind of gives you a sense of design in a different way. So I think that's absolutely very cool, and that it also helped you with your representation of your ideal self. I think that's I don't know, I think that's very healthy and cool. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really good to, especially because you're bypassing your own, I don't know, fears. And so it's basically art as a coping mechanism, which is good because you can channel it. You have control over it. You have the ability to create, and you're funneling it into personal purpose. Great. Yes. Good.
Okay. All right. Kujlik, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Before I started learning how to draw, I was drawing mostly just to draw my funny ideas, maybe funny stories, but I knew the level of art wasn't good. I never felt I'm good at drawing or one of the talented kids, so I was either drawing for myself to get an idea onto paper or to get reactions of others. The idea that you can actually learn how to draw really impacted me. I started learning how to draw from step-by-step tutorials or copying images I liked, seeing how I gained skill. It slowly transformed into learning for the sake of learning. It feels like I was barely doing projects that I cared about. Practicing drawing felt like something that's good, and doing anything other felt bad, because I knew that to get really good, you have to draw and practice a lot, and I wanted to be really good. I was changing topics of drawing as times passed by, trying to make hard work fun instead of working hard because I enjoyed it. At the time, I was also studying drawing for architecture college exams. It all connected with me being unhappy and depressed, so drawing was kind of an escape from these problems. When people told me I'm doing good art and studying drawing more than them, I was happy. Now I tried to do it again to show my ideas, taste, and skill to others. I try to incorporate some storytelling now and then. I feel I'm finally ready skill-wise to do so. And it naturally leads me to what I should practice to do even better, where before I was doing studies just for the sake of doing studies. Learning particular skills like composition, gesture, perspective, and brushwork / line work gives me a lot of satisfaction when I finally nail it. I always enjoyed exploring fictional worlds and concepts created by others in literature, music, or visual art, and I hope others will like what I create as well. And I hope to inspire others to do their thing too. I find it similar to creating my levels in games editors that I wanted others to play. It's also cool that I can do it for money. Yep. That's pretty good. All right. Ryan says, I wasn't really that much into art as a young kid. I had friends in middle school that I drew with. Just other kids who were into anime and whatnot. Standard stuff. I kind of stopped drawing at that point because I became addicted to MMOs. When I was around 15, I had bad self-esteem because I was still badly addicted to MMOs, and I was shamed by my parents for playing them so much. I didn't like how my life was going at this point. By chance, I discovered the manga Bakuman, which is a story about a kid who grows up to become a mangaka. I decided I would try to learn to draw manga in response to that. I had resonated with the main character in Bakuman, who started out in the story with no goals in his life, who simply played video games and did the minimum for everything. In the end, it was never about the manga for me. I went to university for art, got hooked on concept art and fantasy art, etc., and discovered later on that I have aphantasia. I keep making art because I can't avert my gaze from it. I keep going because there are still lessons for me to learn from it. And currently, I keep going because I feel I'm close to the point where it wouldn't make much sense to turn back from the decision to make this a career of mine. Well, I'm a big fan of Bakuman too, so...
Yeah.
Same.
Yep.
I like that. And, yeah, there is that... Like, I understand the sense, like, you do it because you've already done it. It's this, the sunk cost fallacy. But I think it can be very good if you're doing it for the right reasons, and making sure that that's the case is very important. Okay, XFlameR says, I started getting into art just by accident in 2011, although I was scribbling a lot in notebooks before that. But one day, just out of the blue, one of my college schoolmates introduced me to club activity, which was Digital Painting Club, once a week for 2 hours after lectures. The club also had a teacher who was an old dude, kind of graphic designer. He had a hard work but easygoing, don't overthink, putting heart in art kind of mentality. Largely because of him, I've been set up on a mentality of just keep pushing, no matter if it looks bad, it'll be better. It's because of those club activities I was blown away by the excitement of doing paintings and illustrations, which stuck with me, while I was pretty much inspired by other illustrators, anime manga series, which I still really like today. I think this made me sink in art deeper in the beginning. Around my final year at college is when I joined the Cycra forum and watched a lot of tutorials. Also, it's a forum where I happened to meet a lot of awesome people who I spent a large time with after graduation, drawing together with screen sharing. Kept pushing each other forward and not minding being unemployed for almost 3 years just because I hated programming. So, to just hit the fate between the eyes, I was super determined and equally depressed to get into the art industry, which eventually happened. Also, my artist coworkers have been inspiring me in the same regard. I think it's a heavy part of why I keep doing art. I don't think I have high goals with art apart from just having fun with it, learning and teaching a bit, experimenting with it a lot, make people some good time because of it. Although there's one thing I kept dreaming of is a personal project to make either a game or short animation out of, which is still one of my biggest goals since what I'm working on and experimenting with in parallel to my art day job. Thanks for reading. Cool. Thanks for posting. So, yeah, that seems fine. Don't think there's anything
Good.
really commenting on that because it sounds fine. Team says, I'm not sure why I draw, to be honest. I was a little bit above average in grades at school and then took up doodling. Mainly fire and slime and game stuff. But then I felt like I could improve a bit, so I watched videos on the topic. Back then, I was only doing source filmmaker art for, I guess, Team Fortress 2. But this doodle bug I had kept itching, so I kept on trying to learn more. Of course, Cycra was one of the big helps. I come back to some old vids to catch up on what I missed from the first time watching them. Then, on one reference drawing I did, I struggled to draw the head, so the logical answer was staring at me. Yes, a TV! Since then, my first true OC, Ellie, or ETT formerly, was made. I've sort of fell for her a bit, so now the reason I draw is to bring her life in the form of a story or comic. Since then, I've gathered more OCs, so this story I want to make will be all about them. It will also be nice to get a career in art, so I guess my opening sentence is now redundant. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I do relate to how your characters that you create kind of become real in your head, and it's a very cool thing, I think. I like it. I think it's very interesting, so that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to Norzart. I started drawing at a young age, too young to remember, and just kept up with it throughout life. I've drawn for many reasons, but the main thing is it makes me happy, and I like seeing it make others happy too. Commissions are cool, but most often when doing them, I just say to pay what it's worth to them, because the cash is less important than providing someone with something they can't make for themselves. It's fun to finish something and feel good about it, but also, you know you can do better and work to achieve that. Cool?
Cool.
So, fine. Figo says, I've been drawing for as long as I can remember. It was the main source of validation I had when I was younger, since I really didn't have any proper friends at the time. Around 13 years old, I discovered filmmaking and went on an art hiatus for about 3 or 4 years, until I discovered some of Charlie Bowater's art, and it completely blew me away. I was pretty determined to get good from that point. It was only pretty recently that I realized much of my self-worth came from what my peers and family thought about the things I did, be it movies, art, or D&D sessions, and I'm still trying to break out of that cycle. The coin has flipped a bit, and I have to fight myself to not shoot myself down and assume the worst about what people think of me and my art. I'm only scared of what the future holds in terms of real life stuff, since I see so many others my age who are miles superior struggle to make a living making their art, games, or movies. It feels as though my chips are placed, and that if I don't see it through, I'll need to spend years of getting a proper education like my brother did after he finished his music and radio educations and went on to become a marketing strategist. I strive to make art for myself, because whenever I see Kopinski or Podedwurna or any of the awesome people on this server absolutely killing it, I feel almost challenged to become great too, and I really want to enjoy achieve a level of skill where I can express the various ideas and stories I have. I really, really love making cool things for people to enjoy. Thanks for reading. All right. There's a bit to unpack there, but yeah, art is hard to make a career out of, for sure. So I can understand what you mean by, you have to get a proper education and stuff. And sometimes I feel that way too. Like, oh, shoot, what if this all dries up, and then what am I going to do? It's definitely a tough career. And for a lot of people, it's better to not make it a career. It's better to just keep it as a hobby, because you get a lot of advantages in that, where you can draw for yourself only. You never have to worry about art losing its shine, because I've met a lot of artists who only draw for their job. They don't draw personal stuff at all, really. And the reason is because it's just whatever you do and you do a lot of, it becomes a job. Like, at some level, it's very hard to maintain the passion unless you're constantly doing that. Like, if you do your day job and then you go home and you do stuff for yourself, you can keep it going. But some people kind of can't. They just sort of burn out. Art becomes a job, and they only draw for money, and that's it. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have any comments?
I feel like it's really very sad to see when the passion gets sucked out of art, because I keep hearing and reading and listening to people's stories about how, and even the comments we're reading now, like, oh, I started out very innocently and genuinely wanting to express something or draw what I like or make myself laugh, and there's this openness for connection, and then the crush from encountering the hamster wheel or the career field, or just like, oh, how do you fit something so personal into such an impersonal box? I'm really glad whenever I read like, all right, you made it out, you're doing it, you're motivated, you're back in it, you're
there seems to be
regaining yourself.
There seems to be 3 worlds. There's like the art for yourself, what it means to you, your personal drive, then the skill involved in gaining gaining the skill is its own little thing, and then what it means for other people. So, like the business side of things, marketing, networking, making sure your art speaks to other people. And you kind of need all 3 to be successful, or at least 2 of 3, because if you don't have, like, if you're super skilled and you're creating art that is meaningful to you, that still doesn't mean you'll get a job. That you can do that and you could be poor the rest of your life if you're trying to make money out of it, but you don't have a business sense, you don't have a sense of like, okay, now how to do the rest of it. And I think that's something that a lot of times doesn't get mentioned, how to get a job in art, you don't just need fundamentals. Like, you need to offer a service that people need. You need to be able to, like, on top of that, you need to be able to sustain it, like, not burn out, not go ahead.
But there's so much comfort. Like, I'm just realizing, listening to you say it, there's so much comfort someone could find in, well, if you only need fundamentals, that's clear cut. Whereas the
Oh yeah.
making, like, being technically, let's say you're technically proficient and you're making meaningful art for yourself, but you have no audience. You don't, either you have to now go and put yourself out there and find the audience and, like, hammer yourself an audience, carve a niche for yourself, or you have to carve yourself into something an audience would want. And that involves such a huge risk, and it's such a nebulous concept that it needs inner resolve. And if you don't have that, it's such a cozy thing, like, oh, if I only got my perspective right, then there's an area, right? If I only draw fan art, there's already an audience, there's a market. See, those are the people who want me. You don't have to seek
I mean,
things. You
you
don't
could
have to.
you could even get skill, you could have a business mind, you could make a career, you could make it work, and then you could have a scandal that gets revealed,
Yep.
and then your career, you're done, your career is
You're
over,
done.
you're like, there's
Everything is destroyed.
there's so many things that are involved in being
This
successful.
has been on my mind a lot. I was actually, it's one of the things I wanted to talk about, how, because I think in one of the earlier things you talked about the mainstream, and then it's just been going on in my head, like, why does this word bother me so much? Mainstream. It keeps, it's something only an artist would say to another artist, and it just keeps validating this concept of the us versus them, like the outsiders. Oh, they don't get it. And there's truth to that. If you just talk to a friend who's not an artist, they're not going to get what you're rambling about with your values and your compositions. Like, oh yeah, dude, that's a cool picture, yeah. Oh. But there's also this negative connotation where there's the separation. Oh yeah, I'm doing it for the mainstream. Like, people are just people. People are, and I feel like it's so weird how artists who are developing idolize other artists and forget that those artists are people too. So when there's a scandal coming up, it's like, oh my god, but their art was so good, I never could have, like, why would you assume, why did you think that there was not a person with faults and flaws of character behind an art image? It's weird. It's strange. I don't get it.
Expectations.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
but
just
why?
the it's easier to simplify things, just like what you were talking about with the fundamentals. Like, oh, if
Yeah.
I just need to worry about the fundamentals, everything is clear and concrete, and now I know what to do. But if it's
Yeah.
like, oh, if you look at an artist, it's like, I like their art. It's much simpler. It's a happier thought in a way to be thinking like, okay, I like their art. They must be a good person. And that's just a nicer story
if
to
it's
tell
also just
yourself.
exposure, which is like, in the current society, there's like, you don't really see a lot of the more nitty gritty stuff or underneath the surface stuff.
Oh
Everything's
yeah,
just sort
that's
of like,
true.
curated.
That's true. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the stuff
everything-
people show is very like, oh, here's my Instagram picture and my Instagram persona.
And my best angle and my filters and my things, and oh yeah,
you
I
don't
Yeah.
always
actually
this.
see people as people because they don't show you themselves as people.
yeah, everything
But
is
I also
presented.
feel like it kind of plays on this very spread insecurity about your stable self, because when you this is something I've been thinking about a lot as well, like the need for labels, and how you need labels to clarify the world around you and to navigate it, especially if your inner sense of self is not stable. Like if it was me and I noticed that, oh, I keep wanting to know what it's called, what a thing is called, what a person's called, is this person good or bad, I would, I guess I would want to ask myself, why do I have this need to classify things as either good or bad and immediately jump to it has to be black or white because otherwise I can't make sense of it. Like, what is the confusion for me? What am I afraid of? So
I think that has to do with a lack of clarity and maturity. Because it's just like children see the world in black and white. They want everything to make sense. So if you haven't developed enough, and I don't think the world is built to have people develop right now. I think especially in North America, but I think it's growing in Europe and other parts of the world too, where there's this infantilizing of society, and everything is given to you, and everything is sort of nice, and even the idea of rights, where people are like, "Oh, I have, you have to respect my feelings," or microaggressions and stuff. It's very like an entitlement that a child might want, because they feel like, well, this is what I get, right?
it's very not
I
realistic
deserve
and
this.
not responding. Not respond. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, just that the world is not so kind, and thinking that it is. I think, like, I'm very torn on the issue, because a part of me is like, well, yeah, I'd see that if you don't fight for your rights, you won't get them. So you've got to fight for your rights, but thinking that life is not hard is also bad, because then you won't grow to become stronger. Like, you have to be strong,
definitely,
and that requires a degree of suffering, a degree of resistance. I guess that's a better word, resistance. You have, if you want to.
I think it's also endurance, because like everything's about like, oh, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to be attacked, we demand our rights. It's like, oh, that's all well and good, but there comes a time where you need to learn endurance. Like, you need to be able to endure things.
Yeah.
It really is that thing that I was talking about before with unconditional love and support. It feels like people nowadays of a certain age, young people, I guess, they tend to expect strangers to treat them as family members would treat them, with unconditional kindness. Like, right, we're all in this, but there's no connection upon which that treatment would be based on. Like, I don't know you. Maybe for me, you trigger previous negative experience. Therefore, I will not have a good reaction to you by default, because that is my reality. So I feel like people don't quite take into account each other's reality much, which is very, very unsettling for me.
I think it's because a fake reality is created, where you see this person so much. Like, if you watch someone and they're a live streamer, and let's say you watch tons of these streams, and you spend hours and hours spending your day with this person, over weeks or months, you are probably seeing that person more than you would see most of your family members. So your brain probably expects that, okay, I see this person, they are like family to me, but you're only seeing them in the view they want you to see them in, so you're not getting a full picture of what's going on, and so you're constantly being bombarded by the wrong image, like an incomplete picture of reality. Whereas if you lived with that person, like if they were your family member, you would probably, know that, oh, in the morning they ate that thing and then they went in the washroom and they were hogging it for 4 hours because they had diarrhea and they were swearing. You would get all sorts of different pictures of the person. It wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, they're in the on screen, and then, oh, they write, oh, gotta go, bathroom break, be right back. It's like, no, you would smell that bathroom break. You would know what they've been doing. It's a different...
There's so much available superficial connection that there's no time or real estate for real connection, and it's much easier. Like, why would you pick the meaningful friendship with a person that you might fight with? And whereas when you're just watching someone, you can be a total slob. They're not going to judge you because they don't see you. They're not gonna like, oh yeah, here's this live streamer, and if I give them, I don't know, $10, they'll say my name and they'll be nice about it.
Yeah.
Yes, you just got yourself what you wanted without having to put yourself into it. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of enforced in today's culture, and it's not good. I don't think it's good. It's not good. We're headed off a cliff.
It's not good. Abort, abort, abort.
Yeah.
All right. So Kipsy says, I draw to create, but I stopped for a while because I got this mindset that I have to learn the fundies and I had to compete Drawbox before I could draw again. Even though their motto is 50-50 study and fun, I couldn't get past the study part. It took the fun out of drawing for me, but it also made me unhappy knowing my flaws. So I stopped drawing and will only occasionally help someone along. That's not good. That doesn't sound good. That's like kind of the worst thing that could happen, because you want to draw so you can create stuff, and you learn fundamentals so you can create stuff, and then you don't draw anymore. Well, what I would recommend, if possible, is try to draw without worrying about fundamentals at all. Like, if you're not doing this to become a professional, then I feel like fundamentals are there to assist you when you need them. So rather than trying to learn all the fundamentals and then do art after, it's much better to be like, do what you want to draw, get stuck, and then try to learn what you need to solve that problem. Like, maybe that would help. Any other input?
I'm pretty much on the same page.
Okay, let's move on. Jove says, I think I draw because it's what I'm most passionate for. I've always loved drawing since I was a kid, and being able to just make things from nothing is kind of the essence of art, and it's something I find magical. I've also loved telling stories, especially about people. Being able to create people and make them feel almost alive is incredibly invigorating. Yep, I agree.
Yep.
That's very good. All right. Nesso says, wow, lots to read here. My story isn't so different from a lot of people. I grew up in a pretty good home when I was very young. We had money and a big place, our own business. When my mom left and it was just dad taking care of things, things started going downhill real fast. He neglected the house and the appliances. I couldn't even have a shower or eat proper food, and I was there as he'd lock food away and force me to work without pay. Wow. The whole situation became a broken home, and when he forced me to work with people or large dogs when I was a very young teen, my anxiety skyrocketed. I developed anxiety and depression. I was constantly bullied for my personal hygiene or lack of any proper items at school. Art became an escape. I'd seen one particular piece of art, either a promotional piece for a game or concept painting for an environment, and had never at that point seen anything like it. It was so completely different to everything and anything I'd ever witnessed. It inspired characters, stories, the want to create mystical and magical lands with floating mountains and huge clouds that house cities. So then my earliest iterations of Valley of the Gods started forming. And from that day, about 10 years ago now, I swore to be the type of artist to create that awe-inspiring scenescape. I decided that from that day I would put my heart and soul into art to become what I had soon discovered after some delving afterwards, to become a concept artist. I am one of these days, though it's taken that entire time to get good at art and master what I enjoy, and I'm only just getting interviews for professional concept jobs. People always wonder why I draw angels so much, and it's because they offer that escape. They can literally just fly wherever they want. They can escape their problems. They're powerful and impressive. Everything I wasn't and couldn't do. I'm not religious, but the symbol of an angel I draw represents freedom and expression. Well, that's really good. And it's very good that you are so understanding of what it is you create. Like, that's actually pretty rare that people know why they make the stuff they know. I know for myself, it took me a long time to figure out why am I doing this. So that's really good, and I'm really glad to hear you've made it. You're now doing concept art. You're a concept artist. That's great.
Yep.
Right. So Blackmore says, I draw the self-supply lewd fan art, XD. Jokes aside, some productive hobby so I can reduce my gaming time gradually, and positive way to seek attention too. Okay.
That's very valid. That's good. Seems healthy.
No. Not right. Voxel says, I draw to create my own worlds and characters, and also to improve my skills. I only stop for a short time when I get discouraged, then I get back into it. Well, you always should, I say go easy on yourself when you're having a hard time, because the bad times always go away, and usually it doesn't help to be super hard on yourself. I find that it's much more productive when you like what you do. Okay, Perino says, I remember when I was 3 to 4 years old, I asked my sister, to be honest, I was more pestering her, to draw me a Pikachu. She refused because she was studying or something, and I was like, how hard must that be? I'm gonna do it myself. And that was my first drawing. It must have looked like crap, but I was happy with it. Afterwards, I didn't draw, or at least I don't remember myself drawing, until 3rd grade, I think. The reason then was because I wasn't the most popular kid in class, and just sitting there looking at others was kind of awkward, so drawing was a perfect escape for me at the time. When I think about it, I got a decent amount of mileage from drawing 30 minutes every day, every school day. So drawing for me the longest time was dependent on whether or not I had people to talk/play with. Now I'm almost addicted to it in a sense. I constantly consume art, and I always feel an itch in my hands to make stuff, good or bad. I think that drawing became almost a part of my identity. I don't know. I don't think at this point there's anything that can permanently stop me from drawing. In worst case scenario, I would be making drawings with my imagination. But there's definitely things that turn me off of it, namely social media, and how in my head, just by making an account and sharing my drawings, suddenly what I made just on impulse and thought it was fun to make now has value. Likes, comments, shares, reposts, whatever. And whenever I compare pieces, I can't help but think that one is better than the other. Not because of how much fun or meaningful or how I felt while making it, but only because one got more likes than the other. Not to talk about the comparison with other artists and overflow of art, etc. Stuff many smarter than I already spoke of. I guess those are more like challenges I must face and deal with if I want to ever do anything with art, so yeah. Yeah, I think it's super... I think social media is terrible for so many reasons. I think it's got this good side to it, but that good side is like a sliver, and then the bad side is huge, because it's the deluge of things, it's becoming a factory, it's assigning value to things that, like, it kind of creates lowest common denominator, because what connects to the most people, I think
you stop thinking about people, and you start looking at numbers.
Mm-hmm. And also, it gives you a weird type of fake audience where, okay, what I mean by that is, let's say you have work that and you show it to 100 people, and one of those people like it out of 100. Okay, you might think that's pretty bad and no one really likes your work, and then you might make another piece and 100 people and there are 100 people who see it and 90 people like it, and you might think, okay, that's what's popular, that's what I should do. But if you only have a small group of people, like 100 people who see your art, you've got too small of a size to be able to find out if you have a niche. Where if you had 1 million people look at your art, and then there are 500 people who like it, that's actually a niche that's big enough to support yourself on. So it's kind of like you're a boutique store, and yes, most people don't look at your art, but a handful of them do. And so if you were doing this very niche art, might just take way, way longer. Like maybe it takes you 5 years before you develop the audience that you could have developed in 1 year if you did the generic thing. But at the end, you would have a small niche of people who really, really like your work, and your work is coming from the heart because it's exactly what you wanted to create. But because of, and also because before you don't get to constantly see what people are putting out, it's more likely that you have the time to develop that long game. Whereas now everything's about the short game. Everything's about immediate, like, you get feedback right away. This is how many people like your work. This is what's popular. You should do this more. And you don't give yourself a chance to develop.
And niche audiences be much less fickle than non-niche audience.
And they usually pay more for the work. So
because it means more to them.
Yeah, exactly.
What would be, oh, you just scroll through 30 images in 5 minutes, and what are they going to mean to you? Oh, well, swipe, scroll. You're not going to pay for that. Oh, I just saw like 29 others. Why would I pay for this one?
Yeah, like Flavia, when you were doing your skunk group stuff, it's like, who knew there was a group of people who really were into paintings of their skunks?
And they have their own festivals and their own convention type things, and that's
it's cool. Almost enough to kind of survive on if you, like, maybe you need to cater to a few of those specialty groups, but you can do that too. Like, it doesn't have to be the absolute mainstream pop version of yourself, but it is true that it takes a lot longer to develop. Like, there are certain artists I know. One who comes to mind is an artist called Apterus, whose work is not the easiest and not the most mainstream, but I think he's quite successful now, and it's because of, actually I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, but they're quite successful because they kept doing what they do. So definitely not catering to a mainstream audience has its perks as well. All right, Roxim says, I draw for many reasons. I've started out because I wanted to be as close as possible to the amazing world of comics. Furry comics, actually. Lackadaisy, Broken Plot Device, and most importantly, Dreamkeeper's Prelude. They made me experience things I didn't know could be experienced. Such magic, such wonderful and majestic feel. So I've tried to do my best to do that as well as I am improving to make something that would also feel like magic, which is why folks that view my art sometimes see me draw a very cheery picture or something that has a lot of sparkles in it. Drawing is super fun as an activity as well. Dragging your pen across the surface, seeing the lines pan out, it's just fun in and of itself, very rewarding. And amongst all the other reasons, I can single out yet another one. It's amazing as a tool of developing yourself as a person. Your personality even, shaping yourself up, drawing faces, emotions, finding the perfect angle and the perfect position for the mouth, making expressions in person to better relate to the drawn ones. I think viewing the face you're drawing during and after the drawing lets you be more emotional and more out of your head too, if that makes sense. By drawing the expression, by viewing them as references, more acutely than the average art viewer may, I think you may build up your visual expression library, and as a result become a person who is more fun to speak with, even in text. At least that's what I feel like may happen. And of course, it's fun to travel through your own drawings, into the worlds, the feelings you've done your best to put into a certain piece. Naturally, a lot of it comes down to technical stuff, especially if you're not as confident yet at painting. I sure am not. So you just want to make it look appealing. But I do think that every painting we do has something in there that speaks to us personally, and I really value art for letting me personally see it in this form. Well, that is super healthy. That sounds great.
Yep.
Nothing to say about that, other than I'm very happy for you. Yeah. Okay. Maj says, why do I draw? I've been drawing since I was very young, but I don't really know why I started. I guess I just naturally picked it up. The only other person in my family that draws is my older cousin, and I've looked up to him for most of my life. Eventually, I surpassed his technical skill, but I always admired how he had his own unique style. As of now, drawing appeals to me because I can create whatever I want and call it my own. On the outside looking in, I guess that's what would make it fun. but I can't say that I'm having much of that lately. Not sure if it ever was, but drawing has been so ingrained in me that I can't imagine ever quitting. Well, yeah, it's true that drawing isn't always fun. Especially if you're doing it as a career and there's a lot of pressure and things involved, it can stop being as much fun. But I do hope you find what made it fun and get more fun from it. Any inputs?
I think the cycle of it being fun and it not being fun kind of keeps happening over time. At least it has been for me and people I've seen. So if you can't imagine ever quitting, it's bound to get fun again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like...
Yeah, you go through the ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just bound to happen with anything that you spend a lot of time with.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I draw because it gives me a sense of purpose and something to strive for. There are many other things I could do, but nothing gives me as much long-term satisfaction. Also, art is interesting, and there are actually potential real-world applications for it. It's also the first skill or hobby I've stuck with for such a long time, nearly 2 years now. Okay, that's good. Sounds fine. Chicken says, I started drawing years ago simply because it was fun. For a while I tried to actually improve, but then I noticed that I was not enjoying it that much after all. Videography kind of replaced drawing for me as a hobby. Lately, I also started 3D sculpting, which is somehow more enjoyable for me. I did not write off drawing completely, but it certainly isn't my main focus anymore. I think I will get back to it again someday. Well, I would say 3D sculpting definitely helps drawing. You get so much better with form, better with perspective, so I did a little bit of that, and I noticed my perspective drastically improved. So hopefully, if you do get back into drawing, then it helps. But even if not, it sounds like your passion is to create, not necessarily drawing, but whatever medium does the job. So that's still really cool. Okay. Pulse Czar says, when I was very young, I was somewhat aware I couldn't picture things in my head very well. So I started trying to get better at drawing so I could see my own imagination. As I got older, I realized that I wanted to be good and started trying to compete with other kids in my class, so I started trying to get more skill for that reason as well. Then I just have always enjoyed the process. It's very engaging and challenging with a rewarding result. What has historically stopped me and continues to has been having other hobbies. I only have so much time in a day. What's really stopped me from time to time was when people pressed me into showing art when I wasn't comfortable, and it violated the personal nature of the hobby. I've also felt inadequate, like most people, and had trouble getting through pieces due to discouragement. Yeah.
That happens.
No, that's very common what you're going through. And yeah, I can totally understand how, having people ask you to show stuff, sometimes it would be nice, at least for me, I feel like it would be nice if I could go to like some cave and just not be a hermit. And when I think about what I haven't been doing or why I haven't been doing art, not art, making videos. It's kind of that, because I used to have these periods where I would go, I would spend a lot of time by myself, improving, developing, and then I would have brief periods where it's like, oh, here's what I created. And then I go back. And for a long time when I was making YouTube videos every week, it was like I couldn't do that. I was always like, here I am, 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 here I am. So I think it's kind of healthy to have the periods where you're away from people and making stuff and then show them later. Okay, Yefsan says, it all started when I was young. I would see characters in TV shows I watched. And my perverted teen mind wanted to see them drawn in certain scenarios. But a lot of the fan art of things I liked wasn't really that good, even when I didn't know what things like fundamentals were. So I went and tried to get good on my own, so I could just make my own art. I've always drawn since I was a kid, but never that seriously or that often. There was a shorter period where I really got into it because I wanted to draw out stuff for my bizarre crossover fanfic, but the lewd stuff came not too soon after. If I could time travel to my younger self, though, I'd probably tell him it would be honestly easier to go through the school system, get a well-paying job, and just commission really good artists to draw your ideas, because of how long it took and is taking, and the really basic life skills I've lacked on from spending all my time just getting better at art. I've always been not good at social skills, though. I'm a very introverted person and find it hard to relate to most people, so maybe this was the path I would have always gone down anyways. Nowadays, the reason I draw is pretty much the same. I really enjoy drawing cute waifus for people, and maybe someday want to make a comic. But also because there's not much else I can do at this point. Nothing exciting or places to go in the really small town I'm in. No careers that interest me beside drawing, so I just continue on this path to see where it takes me. It seems a bit like there's a grass is greener type of mentality, but I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're absolutely going down the right path, and
I think it may not be the easiest path, yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. Art as a career is not an easy path.
But I feel like whenever is a motivation for doing art is internal, it's kind of like a self-sustaining engine, which is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And like when it's rewarding in and of itself, and when you see your own images and that's the reward, other than, oh, people liked it, or I got comments, or I impressed my schoolmates or the internet or whatever. It's kind of, as much as trying to impress the internet is bound to kind of fail at some point and backfire, this is bound to succeed at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's good. All right. The reason I started drawing originally was because of one of my friends enabled me to feel like I could work towards the path of becoming a good artist. I've consumed art for 7+ years on social media at that point, and I've always wished I could be like those artists, to be able to make something with such high quality in various aspects. The competition and community factor between friends is what enabled that. But that friend ended up leaving, and I stopped making art a few weeks after that. A year later, I started again from some source of inner inspiration and made a commitment to myself to just keep going alone because my desire to improve was strong enough at that point. I kept drawing because I wanted so badly to become good enough to express my own ideas. I've had story ideas, comic ideas, illustration ideas, and other cool stuff like expressing myself through different characters and personalities and styles or whatever. There were times when drawing was actually fun for me, so I kept going because of the possibility of feeling that again. Some people say I should just quit art because I'm not enjoying it, but I don't have much else in my life, and other hobbies and fun things in my life seem to go through the same process depending on my current view of life. These days, I'm still on the journey to find what is truly fun, and to find my path, to find out who I even am. That's a question I discovered is relevant through this journey. I realize I don't know who I am. Every day is a battle to understand how I work. How does willpower work? What makes me do things easier? What makes me want to do things? And most times it feels impossible to keep going. I rarely have much fun with drawing, and it's a battle to just get back to neutral. To have a neutral experience instead of negative. Think competitive games and the rage it can cause. Constantly on the edge of saying I'd quit forever, but when I'm reminded of my goals and the situation I'm in, I know I can't quit permanently. I feel like it could be any day that I discover what it is I love, and then I'd finally be able to replace things like YouTube and social media addiction with just having fun drawing all day. I do 30 to 60 minutes a day currently, but I hope to do maybe around at least 4 hours a day, just having fun. I refer to this fun aspect as the hook, an event that happens at one point that grabs onto you so hard that you feel you can never permanently quit no matter what. I've experienced this for a different hobby in 2014, music. I was almost instantly hooked, so I was expecting my experience to be the same for art, but I've yet to experience that. Another point of tension for me and art is my fear of showing others who I am through my art, my fear of how people will perceive and react to me. Is my skill level too low? Is my subject unacceptable? Have my true desires become corrupted? How embarrassing. I am now aware that a lot of these feelings come from my judgments of myself, but I haven't yet solved these problems. So I haven't quit art, but if I were to, the reason would be drawing for the wrong reasons or having so many misunderstandings of the world and how it works, feeling like I'm somehow fundamentally incapable of enjoying art, If I proved that to myself, maybe I would just quit.
Hmm.
All right, Flavia, what do you have to say to that?
That's heavy.
Mm.
I feel like the thing that sticks out to me the most is, I don't know how to word it properly, but it's this self-discovery through art is so important, and it's so unfortunate that the self-discovery through art can be tainted by showing others them not getting it, like showing it sort of in blank, because when you post something on the internet, it's just there for everyone indiscriminately to see. You don't, like, there are artists who kind of manage to curate their audience, but it still takes time, effort, resources, and all that stuff. But when you show something to a person who is very likely to um, judge it poorly or not understand it, but think they're understanding it and assume stuff, and then assume stuff about your personality, these things carry so much weight, and it can even counter the progress that you're trying to make understanding who you are. I think it's great. I think it's great to try to make art so that you internalize or externalize and then re-internalize your identity through your own filter. And I think it's kind of, it gets messed up when it gets mixed in with skill and comparison and reactions and all these different roles. It's so much noise. It's already a lot of heavy lifting to do your own journey through art and to develop to the point where you can see yourself. But it's so much added I don't know, interference. It's kind of like if you're trying to concentrate on studying for a test, and then there's just people hovering behind you. Yeah, what's that? Why are you writing like that? Your sister writes better. She can run faster. What is that going to do to you? How's that going to help?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, something I find very strange is this concept of the hook. Like, if you have such an event with music, doesn't that just mean you're passionate for it? Like, that's how I interpret it. But if you're waiting for it, I don't know. It's a lot of assumptions. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable about that for some reason.
I think the way it manifests just speaks for itself, I suppose. Because like if I've done like anything that I've tried to learn that I've not enjoyed, I've not really encountered the hook. Or it's just sort of like, I'm trying to learn this, but I'm still not interested.
I kind
Whereas
of
anything that I've
understand
done,
it. I kind of understand it though. I don't know if it's the same thing that I sort of went through, because I started drawing just because I was drawing. Like it felt like a need, a necessity. And then because I wasn't really putting much thought or time into it, I was just drawing whenever I was anxious or whenever I had something to draw. But when I started taking art more seriously, it sort of became this seemingly eternal frustration. But I kind of still felt that need, but I didn't feel the like, I made another image that sucks and isn't what I want it to be. Oh, another image that sucks and isn't what I want it to be. And then I kept hoping and waiting for the hook. I guess I never called it a hook, but that feeling of relief and reward when you're sort of more in control of your own limbs, of your own, what I put down, this mark I put down is the mark I wanted to put down. And that is the hook, what you're hoping for.
Yeah, because that does happen. There is a point where it's like, oh, I can finally draw the things I kind of wanted to. It's closer to what was in my head. If that's what you mean, I kind of understand it.
Yeah, that's how I'm reading it.
Okay.
So you mean like a level up, or it's just sort of like suddenly you can do things that you can't do anymore before, or you couldn't do before?
Because the way I saw it was a bit different. Because I had this with, I mean, you saw with music how it's just like, even if I suck, even though I'm a beginner, I feel immediately like this is very important. I don't care that I suck. Whereas with art, it was more like, I do this as a hobby in the beginning. Like I do it just because I'm bored. But then I took it seriously, but it never had that hook feeling per se.
Yeah, I had it with martial arts, I suppose, where it's just like when I was doing it, I was immediately hooked, even when I was watching it. And then when I started doing it, it's just like, oh wow, yeah, I'm in it.
Like, even
Whereas,
if you suck, you're still in it. Whereas,
yeah, I very much suck, but it's just like it's very invigorating and addictive. Whereas for art, it's just like, well, it's just always been a part of me, and then it's more of a habit, and it's just sort of like something I do naturally. But it's not. It doesn't have the same addictive quality as martial arts has.
I guess there is two options for what this hook could be. Either it's the hook that you initially get that shows you you're doing the right thing, something you're meant to do, or it's the hook that comes, which is more the when you gain enough skill, you can finally say what you wanted to say, and then the fun actually starts.
Yeah.
Because if it's fun, I get it. There's a point, like, even with stuff I suck at, it's not fun when I'm a beginner. It's compelling. Like, I feel like I want to do it anyway. Like, I don't care. This sucks. I still want to do it. As opposed to...
because when you're drawing as a kid, you're not really aware that your Pikachu sucks. It's like, who cares? You saw a Pikachu. You did the thing.
And probably your child eyes make it so it looks way cooler than it really is.
Yeah, exactly. And then you appreciate the fact that you could do it yourself, which is very genuine and honest and direct and good. But when you pick up art as an adult, it's kind of a lot more, you've learned a lot more, you've compared a lot more, like just your life experience tends to get in the way of that genuine, honest expression and I think appreciating your own art is a very healthy thing. Not to the point that you can't listen to critiques or you can't improve or you can't connect, but just the ability to connect to what you're making. It's very good. Very good if you maintain that.
All right. The Oton John says, I started drawing kind of late. I'm 23 now and didn't really start taking drawing seriously until I was 19. Okay, so you've been doing it for 4 years. I've always wanted to learn how to draw, however. When I was in middle school and got introduced to anime, manga, and Japanese RPGs, I was really inspired. I was jealous that there were these professional artists who could make even simple pixel art look amazing. Then later in high school, when I got introduced to Tumblr, back when it was still good, I got to see the work of everyday artists like you and me and was even more jealous. I thought to myself, if these ordinary people can make art and post it online, what makes it so I can't? And I guess at that point, I just said to myself, you know what? Maybe I should just start drawing. And so I did, around my senior year of high school. Art gives me something to do when I'm bored and don't want to play video games. Honestly, I just have this strong desire to create and feel a need to satisfy it. Art for me is just the perfect way to get that need met, I guess. I'm a college art major, and I'm not sure if I'll always be, but I can't see myself doing anything else with my life other than something art-related. What exact art-related thing I'll do, I'm not sure though. Art makes me feel like I'm doing something with my life, and I get to make beautiful, cute, weird, fun things in the process. To me, art is just an amazing thing that has brought countless enjoyment in my life, whether it have been consuming art or creating it myself. Art makes me feel like there are beautiful things in this world, and you can create them if you want, and they can make you happy. The only downside is that it's pretty hard, I guess, and takes a lot of time and effort to get good at. I wrote this very late at night and may not have articulated this the way I had hoped, but I think that this sums it up pretty well. Yeah, I think it sums it up pretty well, and it's very good if you're creating art that makes you happy. All right, so pretty much that's all those comments. Thank you everyone who posted and on the Discord for sharing your stories. It was very insightful. It's kind of different when you see many stories than, like, if there's an interview and it's about one person, that's good, that's interesting, you get a more deep view into their life. But when there's a lot of shorter stories one after another, you kind of get to see the patterns that are common in them a lot more. So I think it was good. I think it's interesting. And with that, let me turn the question on my guests here. Bob, Flavia, why did you get into art, and what keeps you going?
Yeah, Bob, why did you get into art?
Throw me under the bus right away.
Right away.
No, you go first, Bob. Me, I think, from what my parents said, when I was super young, I was already drawing, grabbing whatever I can, drawing on the walls. So for me, I suppose it's just sort of like it was a part of me even at that really young age. Something about drawing was just something that I was, drawn to, basically. It was always a part of me. It's always been something that I've been doing. Even when I was young, when I moved from China to Canada, I've always been drawing. So I guess for me, it's just another language. It's something that I can't help but do. As I've gotten older, it's become something different. I would say for me, art is like right now, it's just about expression. It's something that I'm viewing very much as a discipline, something I'm viewing as something important to explore because it's part of me. And yeah, for me, it's something that I think I need in my life because there are things within me that I want to express that I can't really express with anything else. Getting into martial arts was really eye-opening for a lot of reasons. Not only because it's just like it's completely different, but also because I got a good comparison. I've noticed that for martial arts, it's really good at expressing determination, focus, anger, rage, strategy, deception, all athleticism, and also just it's really good for confronting yourself, who you are, and especially fear. And those are all really good, and I would say vital. But when it comes to just visual art, I can go really deep inside of myself, just to examine my own personalities, or aspects of my personality, and as well as just seeing like what's really there. What are the repeating patterns that come across? Like for example, right now I'm noticing in my drawings like characters with masks, puppets, things to do with reflection, water, and then these are all pointing towards like inwards towards myself. That's something that you don't really get with a lot of other mediums. For me, that's
Yep. I think art is super related to the subconscious, like very effective way of the subconscious communicating with us. I feel like it has the art and dreams are like the primary modes of communication that I think the subconscious utilizes.
Yeah. I don't think there's not many other types of art out there that I think that's really good at getting across the inner workings of a person quite as effectively as visual art.
Mm-hmm.
Like with for me anyways, in my opinion, music is really great at getting across emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Martial arts is really great at getting across determination and aggression and stuff. But with visual art, it's sort of like you can tell your whole life story in a single image. You just have to find the right symbol. And it's like, oh, it's right there. It's an expression of consciousness.
Yeah, it just requires interpretation and decoding. It's kind of like dreams as well.
Yeah. The thing that I find really fascinating with that is just sort of like it's about finding the right symbol. Because if you choose a symbol that you think at first is meaningful, but if it doesn't relate to you or it's not the right symbol, then it just comes across as fake or artificial. And then you have to, for me anyways, I have to spend a long time thinking and drawing a lot of different things before I actually find a right type of image or an object. What it is that it becomes something. It's just like, oh, it's there. It's me.
Yeah, I think that's it's a very different form of art than, for instance, like we work on the Space Waitress K together, and the art involved in that is completely different. It's more just creating a world, whereas what you're talking about is a lot deeper and a lot more personal.
I think for Space Waitress K, it's not really about me. It's about creating a story, and the story in itself becomes its own important thing. It becomes its own creature, basically, with in some ways a bigger picture than the one that's me. Because for the stuff that I work, those are very personal expressions. And it doesn't really necessarily have that much of a bigger picture. It's just deeper. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So Flavia, what's your answer to the question?
Why do I draw? Well, I guess I've had different answers at different times in my life, but I guess I don't draw so much, so I'm going to talk about why I paint, because I paint more than I draw, sadly. But I think my origin story is that my first friend and my first word were both a painting that I had in my closet, and I was talking to it and telling it stories and stuff, and I kind of connected to that painting as if it was not, I didn't necessarily see it as a real person, but more like a real object. And of course I doodled as a kid and stuff, but when I picked up drawing was, I think, when I was around 14. Just because I felt a certain way and I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't really express it in other ways than in painting, and that hasn't really changed. And then, I guess in my late 20s, early 20s, somewhere in my 20s, it started I've been avoiding art. I've been kind of finding reasons not to pursue art. Either, well, this is not going to be accepted, this is not going to make money, this is not a real career, or all that stuff. And it just kept leading to this growing frustration and need, and no, I have to do this. So then why I paint now is because I have to. I feel like I have to. There's a lot of personal reward in it, as I was saying earlier, when I convey something that is accurate or true to me on one hand, and with commercial work, with commissions that I do for people, I get this big sense of understanding and satisfaction when I was able to either capture the expression in someone's pet, and they recognize their pet, and they feel like they feel understood and seen. And with my furry commissions recently, because I've been doing quite a bit of furry commissions, it's helped me understand this world in a way that reading about it or hearing about it cannot for me. So when I paint a character, a furry character, it's the act of trying to understand it through painting is much more meaningful to me than it would be if someone told me a story about what the character does. I mean, it helps, sure, but the fact that I'm able to convey that helps me, when I look at the image, get what it's about. So those are my reasons.
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess what got me into art was just, it's kind of similar to a lot of the stories that have already been told. I drew because I was bored. I was in class. It was a thing to do. And at some point, like, I had always thought I was probably going to be a scientist of some kind. I don't know why I thought I would be a scientist. I would get into a university. I would do all these things. But I started having trouble with science around grade 11 and 12. And it occurred to me that there's no way I'm good enough at this to get into a school. And a lot of it had been assumptions, delusions, maybe not delusions, but sort of like a thing where I didn't know much about the world. I knew very little. I didn't really have much information about things. So I knew I was okay at art because people said I was good at art, and I thought, well, I want to do something I'm good at, so I guess art. I thought I couldn't do, like, my other options, I guess, were writing, because I liked writing, and then music, because I really like music. But with music, I felt I didn't know an instrument. I never learned an instrument. I'm too old to do this. Like, art, I've been drawing my whole life pretty much. And with writing, I'd also been writing my whole life, but writing felt boring. Like, am I just going to be sitting down, like, imagining my life? I'm going to be sitting down and typing and seeing words and letters appear on the screen. And that just felt very boring compared to drawing a picture and then having a picture. Like, whoa, you don't have to, like, read it to get it. You just see it and it's there. So that felt a lot more fun and cool to me. And so I thought, okay, let me do art. And then there was a whole, okay, now what does that mean? And I told this story before of how a teacher of mine told me that they saw me drawing, and my art was a lot of, like, strong warrior dudes, sexy girls with weapons, and this teacher told me that all my art was about power, and I understood what she meant by that, because I did feel pretty powerless in life at that time, and I didn't like that. Wait, my art is just about power, and that's like one phrase that someone can just say, and that sums me up. And maybe this is something like this is very ego driven, but I didn't like that. It felt like, I don't really want to just draw because I lack power. And I thought, okay, so what else do I draw? Is that the only thing I do? The sexy girls and sexy and strong girls, and then strong guys, because I was reading a lot of comics and, like, Western comic books at the time. And then I thought, well, the only other thing I draw consistently is faces. I used to do comics for a little while. In, like, grade 7, I was doing a lot of comics that were just these, like, funny characters interacting. But I thought the other thing I do is faces. And then what did I want to create with faces? And I thought, well, I want to create the emotions I feel, which are a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of hatred. It's stuff I didn't really see. Like, the closest I got in seeing that were like things like Rembrandt, where he would draw people who were melancholic in a way, but it didn't feel like intense. The only place I saw intense anger expressed was, this is kind of cheesy, but in anime, in the fight scenes, when the character would get all pissed off and their face was covered in blood, and it's like, okay, now they're intense. But it felt like that wasn't subtle. That wasn't what I felt. What I felt was like this deep darkness. And the reason I wanted to see it in art is a communication tool. So I thought, if I make a picture that shows my feelings and I capture how I actually feel, which is, at that time, I had a lot of anger and hatred and sadness, that someone who feels the same thing would see one of my paintings and they would know that they aren't alone in the world. Because I felt alone. I felt like nobody feels the way I do. In media, I don't see anything that captures this feeling. I see a lot of happy stuff. I see a lot of determination, but I didn't feel like I saw people like me, like people who it's like, your entire existence is painful and suffering. I didn't see that. So I thought, if I can do this, then I would have done something worth something, like something worthy in the world, to show people who felt like me, this is what, like, you're not alone. And people who don't feel like me would at least know this exists. And if you don't like it, I don't care. You're not my audience. That sounds kind of bad, but that's kind of how I felt. Like, I only want to connect to people like me because I don't see people like me. And so to do that, I thought, how much skill do I need to make a portrait that would be so good that I could convey all the emotions I need to? And around that time, I saw the work of William Bouguereau. and he's this 19th century fine artist, master of the craft, and painted like super real looking stuff. And I just thought, oh, that's a skill I must need. Like that would do it. If I had Bouguereau's skill, I could do it and make my paintings, and people would see them and say, oh, that's very sad. And other people would say, I understand. So then it was, okay, so how'd you learn how to do that? Where'd you get that from? Like, you want to paint like Bouguereau? How'd you paint like Bouguereau? This was very early in the internet and arts, online art stuff. So there were art forums I was part of, but nothing that showed that. There was how to draw anime, and there was a forum called Signo, which it was mostly related to concept art. And then later conceptart.org, there was a forum called Eat Poo. And it was where a lot of professionals were posting, and it was so they would get like harsh critiques. But nothing that was really covering portraiture and realistic portraiture and how to paint like that. So I was like, well, now what? So I read Loomis's books. That was like sort of portraiture, but it wasn't like, how do you paint? How do you paint and make it look like the Bouguereau pictures? So what I did was then just, like, I was always consuming anything related to art because I didn't have the education. I didn't have the knowledge. So I was like, I watched all the Bob Ross episodes. I watched anything on TV that had to do with art. When I went to the library or the bookstore, I looked at all their art books. I looked at all those, crappy how to draw books. I looked at the good ones. I found the harder, like there was, what's his name? He's this German guy, and his books weren't translated into English, but they were about anatomy. Bammes? Anyway, I think that's him, Bammes. Anyway, I found a lot of information. And then it was just like, well, okay, this is all well and good, but how do I do the portraits? And I couldn't figure it out. And then I tried to seek out lessons near me, and I found a guy who did fine art, and he did portraiture, but it wasn't to that type. He was doing like Egon Schiele type of deconstructivist paintings where you have a lot of thinner and you put it and everything sort of runs and bleeds, and it was a cool effect. His name was Justin Ogilvie, and he's a pretty successful artist now, but it wasn't the thing I wanted. And then I saw another artist who kind of did that, but it was an artist called Dana Zhang, and I saw her work, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I saw like, oh, okay, so she just takes a photo and takes a grid and copies it. And it's like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to create people from imagination that feel like this and get my feeling across. And then it just led me down this rabbit hole of looking for skill. Like, how do I do this? What do I learn? What do I need to learn? But along the way, I eventually sort of found how to do it, because over time, more of this knowledge that had been sort of hidden, it was in Russian fine art academies, but it wasn't really in North America and the West, really. This knowledge started to come out again. There were ateliers and there were DVDs you could buy that had like how to do this portraiture. But by that time, like, so many years had passed, and I didn't feel the hatred, the sadness, all that stuff. I didn't feel it anymore. And I felt like, so if I make these images, they're not going to be authentic anymore. They're not going to be genuine. It's not what I really feel. But I had kind of learned how to paint, at least to a degree. But it was so hard for me to learn that I felt like, well, I was always looking at YouTube when it started and looking for art things, and there was never art videos. So I thought, well, fine, I'll just make my own art videos showing what little I know, because if it helps, it's so hard to get that it helps. And I was certain there would be people way better doing videos, and so I started making videos only to share them. And this kind of ties into why I'm not making videos right now. So so I kind of got into, like, I got skill, and then when I had I wanted skill. When I got skill, I no longer had purpose, and so I had to find purpose. And in finding purpose, it's like, well, I have all these skills. What do I use them for? And I got into card art and illustration, and then it occurred to me that, well, I don't like the work in my gallery because I'm just doing it for other people. I forgot, like, what do I like? And I went back to, like, anime stuff, and then I started pointy chins to kind of figure out, like, who am I, what do I do, because I had a reputation growing as this art teacher, but it's like, well, I never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to make art. I wanted to make art that connected to my people, the people I never saw. So I started on this pointy chins thing, which is still, happening right now. It looks like I still upload videos. Mostly it's just pointy chins that are being released, and then I do stuff on Patreon. But what I noticed was my job offers that dried up. I wasn't, as soon as I started doing pointy chins, like, I was doing pretty well with getting work when I was doing realistic painting. And when I started doing my own style, I thought, like, this is going to take like 2 years, maybe 3-4 years tops. I'll have a style. It'll be really cool. People will like it. And then I'll get new jobs as my new self, that I'm making art that I really like. And what happened was the jobs dried up. YouTube was making me money before. I initially didn't start with any idea of money, but I kept getting told by fellow YouTubers, like, you should monetize your videos. You should monetize your videos. It's free money. Why are you not monetizing your videos? This is dumb. So, okay, I'll monetize my videos. So I was getting a bit of earnings on YouTube, but those were also getting smaller. So it was like, okay, I've committed to do this pointy chins thing, to find out what my style is, to develop one, kind of to prove that it could be done. And that's just me being stubborn and probably stupid and thinking, like, I want to prove a thing. I want to show that this can be done. But what happened is, because I was making less, I had to kind of find money elsewhere. So I made an alias. I started doing commissions on the side, and I was becoming successful. But I realized, like, enough to get by, like, not really successful, but enough to to get by. But in terms of art, I felt like by this point, and this is just a few years ago, there's a lot of good art channels now. There's a lot of artists who are showing the information that's, like, way better than I could show. So it felt like there's not really a need for me to, like, I'm not making videos to be famous. I never did that. I wanted to make videos only to help people. So I'm not like, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be famous. I know some of the YouTube art channels are kind of about that. Like, they want to entertain and be, like, I want to be entertaining, but only so that you remember the knowledge, because I think without entertainment, it's harder to remember stuff. But I don't have the energy to be like the, whoa, look at me, guys, hey guys, blah. I never liked that. Like, that's one of the reasons I like Bob Ross, is because he was quiet and he just was soft spoken. And I don't like a lot of flash. When I see a lot of, like, production value on videos, it makes me feel like, what are you trying to sell me? What is this? It's fine. You can just talk. You can just be, like, calm. And I felt like there's not really a place for people who are more calm. And the videos I did make that meant more were things like the Psychological Problems podcast, where I'm talking about psychology and art. And those didn't really do that well. So it felt like there's not really a lot of, I don't know, need for what I'm making. And there are other people who do good art videos. So what am I there for? There's stuff I've learned that I do think I could share and that would be useful, but it's stuff I'm still figuring out. A lot of it has to do with making like the comic. I'm learning a bunch of stuff, and some of the stuff we've talked about on this stream. So that stuff I do want to share, like things about story, character, this idea of art as a service are things I'm interested in talking about. But anyway, that's it. That's why I'm not making that many art videos lately. What is art to me now? It depends. So every day I do sketches in a secret sketchbook. And those are my personal work. That's stuff I don't show anyone. And it's my subconscious on paper. And then I do my commission work, which is make money. And I strictly make that alias, and this really helped me actually, to make an alias that is purely designed to make money. It's not about me. It's not about personal expression. It's only about earning a living. And in that, I treat art as a tool. Like I'm a tool to be used to complete a task that gets me money because I can't do anything else. I don't have any other qualifications, and it provides a service. That's it. And then I have art as the thing I'm using to make Space Waitress K, which is more like a vehicle, a way of communicating. Like, I'm not trying to make pictures that are necessarily like, oh, this is such a nice picture. It's more like, no, this is necessary to tell a story. So it's just a medium to tell a story. And that's a different form of art. So one is to act as a personal expression, the other is a service to make money, and the other is developing ideas, being a creator, getting your world created and out there, and being able to show that to people. So that's it. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add. We had a few topics that we're gonna elaborate on. Do you remember?
It was so long ago.
Sorry, yeah, this has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think most of it we actually covered during the span of it, because we did talk about how you need to do art for a service, how it affects people psychologically. Yeah. All right. Well, let's call this one a stream then. I want to thank my special guests, Bobby Pag and Flavia.
Yay.
Whoa.
And thank you for anyone who stuck through and is, you got through this long ass stream. I hope it helped, and thanks for watching.